Welcome, everyone, to Ghost Helpers. I'm Tina Irwin, and I'm here with Laura Van Tyne. And we would like to thank you for joining us today because we're going to discuss a simple fact that the paranormal is so much more normal than you think. And paranormal stuff happens every day. This week, we're going to be sharing some stories, some of the oldest ghost stories. How old can a ghost be? But first, we're kind of going to pivot around to a current event story that happened. And because there's an awful lot that can be learned from this unfortunate event. So, Laura, it was in your hometown.
It was in my hometown in
The kids were
Poway.
from your
The kids are
hometown.
from my hometown. And this happens in everybody's hometown at some point. Last week, there were 5 teenage boys who ages like 15 to 19 who got into one of their parents' cars and they made some really poor decisions. It's the stuff that parent nightmares are made out of. And at 3 a.m. on a Saturday night, these boys were all highly intoxicated, driving a BMW. The driver had had his license revoked for something. I don't know what, but I'm assuming probably unsafe decisions. Anyways, this car it was on the San Diego freeway. And in San Diego at night, you can go pretty fast.
You
And
can go pretty fast during the day.
in the day, it's not like LA, right?
It's not like LA, which is the perpetual parking lot.
So the car ended up veering off of a 40-foot embankment. It hit the guardrail and flew off the side, and it flew 40 feet, and it exploded into a gulf of flames upon impact. And immediately, 2 of the 5 boys died. And it's possible that others have died also. We know that the driver is still in a coma to this day. And how do we know this? And what happened is, when bad things like this happen, and these were some really poor decisions. I mean, it's no parent should ever have to go through this. I think that's a fair statement. We went in to cross over those souls because what Tina and I know is that when somebody is suddenly ejected out of their body, they may not know they're dead. If you're super intoxicated, you're not going to know you're dead. And so Tina and I remote viewed this location and we found all the boys there, the boys who died, and also the boys who were in a coma. Their soul was ejected out of their body, but they're not with their body. This is kind of a esoteric thing to grasp here. So we crossed over the dead boys because we need to clean up that energy. We don't want that to keep happening to other people, intoxicated or not. It's the predecessor energy.
That predecessor energy is going to linger at that site until somebody comes along and cleans it up. And we're kind of like the psychic cleaning ladies, for lack of a better.
Yeah.
That's the most humble phrase we could possibly use. We just cleaned that area up so that it won't continue to be attractive for
future accidents. And one of the things that was a little disconcerting, first of all, yes, these boys were all intoxicated. They made some bad decisions. But while we're at this scene, if you've ever seen the movie Ghost, at the very end of that scene, you have all of these little, what we call lower realm intelligences coming up at that murderer guy. These things were surrounding the boys. And the boys were, honestly, they were very belligerent. They were swearing. They were still partying also. We crossed.
Their sort of drug and alcohol induced mental frame of mind
just because
stop at death.
Yeah, it doesn't stop at death. That's, I think, one of the things that we want to bring up is that when you're intoxicated, it embeds your soul, not just your physical body, but also your soul. So we cross over the dead boys, we clean up all these lower realms, but the boys that are still alive and are still in a coma, we assigned angels to them to bring them back to their body. And I know this sounds really strange and kind of wackadoo and out there, but by bringing him back to his body, he now has a better ability. He has ability to make a better choice if he's going to live or die. It's not our decision.
No, you can't cross over somebody in a coma. You don't have any jurisdiction to do such a thing. You can cross over the dead, but not the coma people. And that's
We talk
but
about this actually in great depth in the third Ghost Stories from the Ghost Point of View book. The Shadowlands, I think is what it was called.
it's the story about the Shadowlands.
And it was the same thing. It was a car accident, but these kids weren't intoxicated. This was just
a joyride gone horribly wrong.
a joyride gone horribly wrong along a, we hear of these concepts along the roads, Dead Man's Curve, or there's always accidents here. Why is that? Well, if you clear the land and you cross over the dead, as we're driving by, our subconscious may not be diverted. And we look and we see something out of the corner of our eye and we have an accident. So that is always, it's a huge public service to cross over the dead that have been at any accident site like that. And, people will put up crosses and flowers at accident sites along the side of the road. While that's meaningful
to the
family, it also attracts more dead and more of these dark intelligences to feast off of those souls.
And it's distracting for other drivers. And I know that's probably not politically correct, but let's look at what
Since when are you politically correct?
Not ever. Not ever politically correct. My point is that when you're driving, anything can be a distraction, and an awful lot of crosses on the side of the road, again, they're really meaningful to the family, but we're looking at what is the overarching greatest good. And the overarching greatest good is not to have those crosses and flowers,
balloons, etc.,
constant reminder
on the side of the road
of the death of those people. And if you happen to see that and you're driving by, cross the dead over. I mean, use the crossing over prayer card and cross the dead over. And because they are a distraction for any driver going by, you can't help it. You're kind of magnetic to those crosses on the side of the road, and then you feel bad and you're distracted.
Yeah. And by the way, we're going to be talking about really old ghost stories, because how old is too old to be a ghost? But one of the things I want to bring up is that if we hadn't have crossed those boys over, they never would have had the opportunity to cross over into the heaven world for soul healing and soul restoration and guidance. And that is a big deal. No matter how we lived or how we died, every soul needs to cross over, because it helps the living and it helps the dead. There's
another little element here. Those little dark beings were feasting on these souls, the drugs, the alcohol, the energy of the accident, the energy of death,
the fire,
all of those were feasts for these lower realm intelligences. And by denying them that energy and that location has to completely calm down, because we also crossed over and removed the lower realm intelligences. We didn't just banish them, we actually removed them. In addition to the souls, they go to different places. And those kids may have made bad decisions in previous lives.
It's not our choice. It's not our decision to say who goes where. We hand that off to the higher realms, because we don't get paid enough for that, do we?
It's way beyond our pay grade. So, and besides, it gives the people in the higher realms a job,
something to do, right?
Something to do.
But the big issue here is everything is energy. Our souls are energy. Computers are energy. Even food is energy. All of these things are energy. And when we can cross over these souls, you got to remember that these dark beings don't have access to the God source. So they need a step down transformer, and they love this soul energy of humans, because that's what they need to feast off of and to wreak havoc. So if we cross them over, we stop that cycle. And I know that's getting pretty deep, but
no, it isn't. We're stopping the karmic clock. We are influencing their karma because we cross them over. We're influencing it in a positive way. We cannot change the karma that happened. That's not our job. Crossing them over stops the karmic clock and enables them to have a better start and a fresher start in the next life.
Okay. Before we start with old ghosts, I want to talk about a little project we've been working on.
Okay. We're going to switch gears here.
And then we'll talk about old ghosts.
Switching gears. All right. Okay. You go, girlfriend. She's really excited.
I am really excited, because this was like, in many ways, my kids' childhood and my childhood. And that is the movie Frozen is full of psychic abilities. It's a very spiritual movie that's cloaked in an animation. I called it a cartoon, and Tina's like, "You can't call that a cartoon." I'm like,
Well,
"Okay,
I mean,
fine.
you need to be modern, Laura.
Okay,
I mean,
fine."
come on now.
Look,
It's an animated
it's an
film.
animated film. So this animated film is full of all kinds of spiritual insights, and we are creating an online course based on that. We're in the process of creating it. We're going to release it in mid-March. And anybody who is interested in taking this course, we're going to do basically a pre-sale of $19.99, which is really, really, really low because this is an intense and long course, um, full of amazing information. If you go to ghosthelpers.com and you go down to the courses, you can pre-purchase that. And so for the first, and Tina doesn't know this, watch the look in her face. For the first 50 people who sign up for this course, we're going to do a webinar, a live Q&A that you may have, and we'll be able to have one-on-one interactions.
Can I buy new clothes for that?
Yes, you can.
I can go, oh, yes, I can go shopping.
So for the first 50 people that sign up, we are going to be offering a live webinar, which is a Q&A. So you can ask us any questions one-on-one. We have to limit it to 50 because we want to make sure that we can address everybody's questions. So, yeah.
Well, I did want to say that the idea for this course came from my daughter-in-law, Amy. And I've seen I've got a lot of granddaughters, so I've seen the show a couple times. And Amy and I were sitting down at Christmas, and she said, "There's some really unusual things in that film, things that all of these different nature spirits and water has memory. What's that all about?" And we had had a coffee. We sat down and had coffee and just went over. And I thought, you're not the only one with these questions. What do these things really mean? Like, what is it with the salamander and fire? How is that just an animator's idea? Not going to give that away.
Right. And the
In the
fifth
course.
element. And, what Elsa's really doing is she's manipulating energy with her hands, but you have to make it tangible. So they're using water. I mean, it's just one of the many things. And we can all do this, but we have to be responsible with it too.
You mean I can freeze somebody out?
Yeah. How many times have you done that to me? No, I'm kidding.
So this course is it's a lot of fun. But if you think you have a psychic kid, or you think you were psychic as a child, and you want to understand some of these elements of magic, which actually are recurring themes in an awful lot of especially Disney films, how does this stuff work? And maybe it's time to just take it all apart and not remove the fun elements, but just go into it a little deeper and look at some of the really ancient knowledge and how it was applied in a modern day film.
This in 2020, Tina and I've been talking about the fact that we are literally focusing in on soul health, spiritual awakening. This animation, not a cartoon, is there's a lot of spirituality and spiritual elements to this that we want to be addressing, because if you don't, our soul health is tied to our mental health, our emotional health, our physical health, even our financial health. And if we can address the soul of the living and the dead, we can really start to help raise ourselves up so that we have more wisdom. We can understand things on a different level. So that's what this is about. And we are so excited about it.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun.
Okay.
All right. So
how old can a ghost be? Can you ever get timed out as a ghost?
Actually, no.
Yeah.
A ghost can be very, 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 very old.
And a ghost is a soul who's stuck between dimensions. They're literally stuck between heaven and earth. We've left our physical body and they have not crossed over. And so they're languishing in the fourth dimension.
And this goes back to the physics principle that energy is neither created nor destroyed. And if my husband were here, he would give me this entire dissertation on entropy and how the law of thermodynamics really works. But we're not going to do that because I don't have that memorized. Energy is neither created nor destroyed. Bottom line.
It can shift, right? And so
changes shape, which is exactly what happened in Frozen. It changed shape. And that goes back to this basic principle. And the energy that is a person has to go somewhere. It doesn't become compost. It can't.
All right. So let's start out with your trip to Bath, England that you took a couple years ago.
In 2016, we were in Bath. our daughter was getting her master's at the University of Bath, and it's a really, really ancient place. And they have the Roman baths there that are still, I mean, the water still keeps coming into these baths. It's just been flowing for 2,000 years. These were established before the time of Christ. It gives you some idea of how old they are. And some of the Romans went into these areas. In addition to the original people who lived in this area, they used those springs. But the Romans, being the Romans, loved water. So they built these incredible structures. It's a really beautiful facility. And you have rooms with hot water and rooms with cold water, because that's how the springs came in. You had changing rooms, and it was astounding. And I mean, it's a large complex in downtown Bath. It's just fascinating. Loved being there. And we turned to this corner, and there are these two 10 or 12-year-old boys. And they go, "Do you think he's still mad at us?" And I'm thinking, I know my husband did not hear that. "Do you think he's still mad at us?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. Who would that be?" And they said, "We think he's still mad at us because he was beating us pretty badly the other day." And I'm thinking, yeah, and he just beat you to death, both of you. I don't know. I can see that you're pretty bloody, and I don't know what he used to bludgeon them, but they were dead. And they had been dead 2,000 years in the Roman baths. And I got the impression it was the first person they'd actually spoken to. And I asked them if they were tired, and they said they were tired and cold, and they didn't want this man to come back and beat them again. And I said, okay, then let's, I brought in a team of angels,
And they had no idea they died.
They thought that they were waiting to get beaten again and to get their wounds cleaned up so they could go back to serving. They were basically slaves to this Roman guy, because the Romans had a lot of slaves, and they were white slaves. They weren't black slaves. And they would take native people, and then they would capture them. Some of them would become slaves, or they would bring them in from other countries, because the Romans were constantly conquering. And they were so stunned. They said, "You mean we died?" I said, "Yeah, it's been quite a while since you died." They couldn't read or write. They had no education. They were just boys that helped people with their clothing and, toweling off or whatever it was that the Romans were doing in and out of the baths. And so I crossed them over, and they went, "You mean we're not ever going to get to grow up? Even as slaves, we wanted to grow up." And I said, "I'm awfully sorry, but your time will come again. That will get to happen." And then they were gone. So they won't be bothering, they won't be coming up to any other tourists.
Well,
and how many thousands of tourists might have sensed them, but didn't really.
Right. And it's not that they were bothering people necessarily to be vicious.
You're thinking malicious
and vicious, right? So
I heard that.
She can read my mind. There have been times where we're working on a book and she's typing a sentence and I'm not saying a word, but she's typing my thoughts.
It's really scary.
So not kidding. Be careful what you think.
Yeah.
So anyways, but she doesn't do that with everyone. So I don't want people to think that she's out reading minds. That does not happen.
It's exhausting.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to these.
All right.
So these little boys got crossed over. So they were 2,000 years old. And I think that a lot of people reincarnate from that dimension, but sometimes they don't reincarnate for a really long time.
And we want to talk about this reincarnation concept. So it was taken out of the Bible in the Council of Nicaea, and I forget
1428. Not that I keep.
No, it was before. I thought it was before that. I think
1428.
Okay, we're not going to debate this, but it was taken out of the Bible, Council of Nicaea. Go look it up. And what that did was it gave power to the priests and the church, because if you had one life to live, you better believe this authority figure so you don't go to hell for the rest of eternity, basically.
But there was another element to that.
There's another element. Yes, go for it.
The other element was that one of the prostitutes who was sleeping with one of the cardinals whispered in his ear that she wanted that reincarnation thing removed because she didn't want anybody to come back and recognize that she'd been a prostitute in another life. That's how heavily this was believed. And so she, pushed him to get it erased so that she wouldn't feel harmed, which I cannot even imagine the karma of
Yeah.
that one action, but it was significant.
And if you think about the logic behind that, it's absurd. But, whatever. If we only had so what this has done is throughout the planet, and not every culture, not every part of the world believes this, but many people believe that you have only one life to live. Then you die and you go play a harp on a cloud for eternity, and that's it. Well, that's a really simplistic view. We have many lifetimes to live on this planet so we can learn and grow or not. And by crossing over, when we cross over to the heaven world, we come back, we're fortified with knowledge, with healing, with all of these things that are afforded from God, the God source, whatever you want to call it. But there are souls who do not cross over. And at the beginning, we were talking about those 5 boys and all of these lower realms that were now onto them. And if we had not crossed them over, they would have languished in that 4th dimension until they were reincarnated from that 4th dimension. That's a big deal.
And that really is our compassionate focus, is to help all souls, living and dead. And how old can a soul really be? Well, I happened to collide with a stack of time that was 2,000 years old. And the concept of a stack of time goes back to a lot of the work of Einstein, that time doesn't just follow in
It's
this
not
straight.
linear.
It's not linear. It can be in different stacks, because the energy, if you look at trees, have leaves that trees lose their leaves and they create layers of soil. So when an archaeologist looks, he sees the layers of time. Well, that's energy. And the things that happen in that time are layered. Well, that's a stack of time in a visual sense. And if you have a very old location like the Roman baths, I'm sure there are many other people. That day, I was only shown those 2 boys. I can't tell you why. And
Yeah.
so that's what happens. And you can have someone who's 5,000 years old. It doesn't matter. If you happen to be clearing a stack of time, you're going to go back to the earliest influencing stack of time to begin to clear it. And you don't get to decide how old that is.
Right. And we have to remember that not all souls are heaven sent. When a baby is born, oh my gosh, what a great gift from heaven. Not always. For example, serial killers probably don't come from the heaven world. And what we found out over the years is that when a soul reincarnates from that 4th dimension, they come back to this planet a little more broken, with more issues, violent tendencies at times, or a lot of
And
times.
more of the original soul energy shaved off.
And that's a problem. And so by crossing over all souls, it helps the planet and it helps the living. And with these boys, they made some really poor choices. They intentionally got intoxicated. They intentionally got into a car, and that car became a weapon. Now, it's not ours to judge if they should cross over or not. The idea is that they all need to cross over, so the heaven world now has access to their souls for healing and restoration, and lessons and opportunities to possibly grow from those experiences. It doesn't mitigate what they've done.
It doesn't change the karma of the event. The event took place, and there may have been other. Nothing is as black and white as it seems on the surface. Yes, they were, 4 or 5 angry teenagers, but you see this a lot. What made them angry teenagers? Did they come in that way? Was there an issue that was going on around them with, a family member? Had something happened to each of them? And again, there's a lot that we don't know, so it's not up to us to judge that situation.
No matter how horrible the crime may have been, with a soul that is stuck between dimensions, they need to cross over. I remember one of the first, God, wicked person I'd ever crossed over kidnapped some women in Ohio. I mean, it was horrible, but if we would have let him languish, and I have relatives over there, then I think that was the connection. if we had let him languish in that fourth dimension, he would have haunted his kidnapped victims. He would have haunted the living, and he would have come reincarnated eventually, even possibly more as even more of a monster than he was in this lifetime.
Exactly. And that's, again, that's our goal. And that's been the goal with this show from the very beginning, whether it was when we started out with the karma part and then we moved into ghost helpers, is to help people understand that your actions and reactions are going to echo out through time.
All right. Well, with that, you're listening to Ghost Helpers on Transformation Talk Radio, and we will be right back. Welcome back to Ghost Helpers, and we're going to start this section off with an announcement that we have. And it's been a really, it's been a really hard decision to make. And next week is going to be our last show here, because we are going to be out traveling and speaking a lot in 2020 and building courses and some other things. So we're going to take a little bit of a break from the radio show life at Transformation Talk Radio. And we are very, very grateful to Dr. Pat and the whole team, Zach and Benny and, our old producer, Kat and Nate, and they've all been so wonderful. And it's not a decision we came to lightly, because we love doing this and we love hearing from you, but we're going to be shifting gears a little bit. So if you don't follow us on social media, you can go to Facebook and you can find our Facebook page, Real Ghost Helpers. You can find us on Instagram and LinkedIn and Twitter, all of those places. And if you're not on social media, shoot us an email at contact@ghosthelpers.com, and we will keep you apprised of where we're at and what areas of the country we're going to be in. We're really quite excited about this. And it was a tough decision.
It was a tough decision. And it really taught us a lot, more than just about mascara and how to make your eyes look great on a video.
When we did our first radio show at WCJV out of New York, like all those years ago, I would quip, oh gosh, I have a great face for radio. And then Transformation Talk Radio is like, oh yeah, but we put a camera in front of you for this one.
Yeah, we had to learn all those.
So we learned a lot, and we're very grateful for that. So please do follow us. And, we love hearing from you guys. It makes our day when we hear from you, honestly. And next week, we're going to be doing our very last show, and we're going to finally go to Monument Valley, pending any rupturing appendixes or whatever. So, and this is a place that we go to every year.
It's sort of our pilgrimage.
It's our spiritual happy place. And we are talking with the owners about creating a spiritual retreat sometime.
And the owners of Goulding's Lodge.
Yeah.
They don't own Monument Valley.
They don't own Monument Valley.
They've just been there forever.
Yes. So that's what we're going to be focusing in on 2020. And we're going to take the month of February off from recording. And in March, we'll probably do some Facebook Live things here and there. So please do follow us, and we would love to have you join us with us.
And if you're listening to our app, you can still listen to previous episodes, and we will be uploading new episodes through and they will be available on the Ghost Helpers app.
That's true. We never advertise that, but we do have an app for your phone called Ghost Helpers. So go to,
it's free.
Your Google Play or your iTunes, and you can download Ghost Helpers.
Yeah, it's really cool. We also want to remind everybody that we are very ordinary people and we had an extraordinary series of experiences happen to us, which means there's a lot of things we aren't. We're not casting aspersions on people in any way who are this, but we're not angel walk-ins. We're really ordinary women who have had some tough, I mean, I just do have a PhD
Paranormal
from the School of Hard
episodes.
Psychic
I mean,
Knots.
you are a retired Navy commander. I'm a public school teacher. I mean,
So
normal.
we're what would you would consider normal, and we don't read cards, we don't do Ouija and tarot, we don't channel at all. We're not alien, although my husband wonders about me
Really?
sometimes. I'm going to tell you with this face, I'm not a priestess.
Dang it. You know what?
I'm not.
Damn
I'm
it.
never
Because
going to be
here's the
there.
thing is if you were a priestess, that would make me a high priestess.
I know you'd be a high priestess,
Dang
but
it. I took a picture today, by the way, of the 4 pillows you sit on, and I posted it on Facebook. So go see what Tina sits on every week for this show.
yeah. And the other thing is we're not goddesses because that would make men gods, and that's kind of doesn't work for me. Um, Men are on the same path we are, and I like that level playing field a lot more
Well,
than that.
And when we look at reincarnation, and we talk about this in the book Soul Evolution, Past Lives, and Karmic Ties, we don't always reincarnate here as men all the time or women all the time. We need a variety of experiences.
Yeah, mortal life is just this whole experience buffet, and sometimes you get a real bad dish. The other thing is, we're not shamans. We have a deep and abiding respect for native cultures who have shamans and faith healers from those traditions. And so we respect them, but that's not what we are. We don't make that. We're also not, we don't run around saying we're healers. We would never say that. The only real healer I could say would be Christ. Christ was a real healer, but we're just ordinary people helping out. We're also not qualified Reiki masters. We're not. We have never been to Reiki school. So for those people who are Reiki masters, we want you to know we also deeply respect the time and effort that you've gone to.
And
We're
what
never
we,
going to claim that.
but what we do is we always study. We're
We're
always
yes.
studying what works and what doesn't work. And, you know, I was having a discussion with somebody about a very popular reincarnation book, which I really like, by Denise Linn. Great book. But, you know, sometimes there may be an element in that book that I would disagree with or someone else would disagree with. It doesn't make that a negative thing. It's just that, and this was the conversation I was having, there's so much to learn within that book. There's nuggets to grab. Some of it may ring true for you, some of it may not. And I think that's how we apply what we learn with all of these books and all of these things that we study and look at.
And when we're putting a course together, the information in the course comes from years and years of studying a lot of the occult, a lot of the ancient wisdom and knowledge through some I'm losing my voice here, some astonishing writers, some people who have had some amazing experiences, and their information has been tested over time. So when we're doing a course, it's not just, we channeled someone and we wrote it down. We actually do a huge amount of research and study and match. So we also verify what we're saying. So it is as accurate and as true as we can possibly make it. And if we recommend an action, that means that we have used that action, we have done it, we've tested it so that we can be confident in what we're sharing with all of our listeners or people who take our courses or read our books.
And at the end of the day, you have to do what rings true for you. We're all in that same bucket, right? We all have to do what rings true for us. And we always say, you know, whenever we have a client or we're working with somebody, you know, find your truth. If you agree or disagree with us, that's okay, but find your truth. Don't hand your power over on a platter. And we see this a lot of times, especially in the Facebook groups about people, can somebody read me? Can somebody, you know, what you're doing is you're handing your power over to a stranger and you don't know what that stranger really is capable of doing. And that puts yourself in a really dangerous position.
And that's really why we don't ever make a claim that we're healers. If someone works with us and something in their life improved, it's because the person on the other end of the phone
Did the work.
did the work and was part of the healing process. And there are some people who have the amazing ability to heal, but it's exhausting. I can assure you,
Yeah.
it does take their energy. I had one guy tell me, he says, I am a great healer. And I said, you drove up in a brand new Jag. And he says, let me tell you, you can make a ton of money at this. And I said,
Yeah, there's a
oh,
lot of
my gosh.
charlatans out there.
And he said, but I want you to teach me remote viewing because I know I could just do so much more. And I said, I'm sorry, I don't teach that at all. In
There's a
any way,
lot. Well, there's a lot of karma with it.
there's a lot of karma with it. And he said, and after I heal somebody, I am just charged up. And I said, really, you're not exhausted. And
Well,
and that was a
yeah.
key element for me, because we could do a whole dissertation on
when
healing.
you're doing healing and you finish healing with somebody, you should be tired. You shouldn't be full of energy, because that means you're taking the energy from your client.
Now, there are going to be people who disagree with this. They're going to say, I just channel the energy of the divine and I give it to the person and I get whatever is left over. The problem I have with that is if you are, in fact, bringing down divine energy, it's at such a high frequency, you have to step it down like a step down transformer so that the mortal person can actually use that energy. Otherwise, it doesn't actually go into them.
Well, let's talk about a person who says that they have an angel walk into them to give divine guidance. Well, angels are really high frequency and they abide karmic law, tooth and nail here. So if an angel walks into me, they're violating a lot of spiritual law, but also they could probably make me like explode or something.
The problem I have with that is that no angel can violate
Free
the
will.
sanctity of the free will of a mortal person. So I think that when people say that, I think they're very well intentioned and I think they want to do really good things for other people. And the truth is, you don't really know who's there. And
we do a lot of due diligence when we're working.
When we work with the other side, we do, like Laura said, amazing amounts of due diligence.
You can
every
never
single time.
Blindly trusting is dangerous. And
Exactly.
when we talk about, we never use the word spirit for that reason. There's all kinds of spirits. If you go to the zoo, you've got all kinds of animals. You've got mammals and reptilians and, birds and all kinds of stuff. So
reptiles.
Reptiles
Reptilians are supposed to be aliens.
Okay. Reptilians. Yeah, you're right. Maybe there's reptilians at the zoo. That might explain some things.
That would be hysterical.
So anyways, thank you for that clarification.
Yeah. To that end.
The word spirit constitutes all kinds of things. It constitutes, our soul. We are a spirit. There are lower realms. Those are spirits. There's angels. Those are spirits. That's why we never use that term. It's best to categorize and label things so we know who and what we're really dealing with as best as possible.
As much as we possibly can. And what we thought we would do is a little bit of a retrospective today.
We're going to,
regarding some of the things that people have sent to us. And they're telling us that some of the things that we've said have helped them. And we thought we would share some of this because
this really one we got actually just a few days ago. And honestly, Tina, it made me like cry a little bit.
Oh yeah. I was just stunned with this one.
This is from Catherine. And she says, I was lost and I didn't even realize it. I thought I was an atheist. I even married one. Then I started listening to Ghost Helpers, previously The Karmic Path, for the past year. I have listened to every show. They taught me things that I thought were lost to me forever. They answered my questions patiently, and they helped me find my own answers. I didn't realize I never stopped believing in God. I had only given up seeking Him. My life has utterly changed. I left a rather challenging marriage. I stopped smoking weed, and I started to follow my dreams. I feel the joy I thought naturally diminished after childhood, like a full force of wonder and delight at an uncertain future. It's not the paranormal story, but most of the good bits are still unfolding. And for now, I'll just say the ghost helpers are soul helpers. And thanks to them, I feel alive again.
That was
And
really cool.
I
We're so grateful
I
for
can't
that.
believe I read that without choking up, because that it means the world to us to know that we're able to help somebody like that. And the fact that they can take that knowledge and move it forward in their life and for those around them. That's really that karmic ripple effect is all about. So, Catherine can take what she's learned and she can apply it to her life, and that echoes out in her world as well. And we're so grateful for her to have written into for that.
Exactly. So thank you again for that. The next one comes from a listener named Jamie. And she said, I'm so glad Laura helped me. She saved my life. She really, really helped me. A complete stranger. I needed help crossing over my grandmother. I was crippled with grief. Not only did she help my grandmother to go home, but she also helped cross over a lot of other ghosts that kept following me. Thanks to her, I feel so alive and no more hauntings and no more night terrors. I can't thank her enough. I will never forget her. Thank you again. This was the best lottery win ever without the money. And she really loves the crossing over
Yeah,
prayers
and
too.
if you go to ghosthelpers.com, there's a series of crossing over prayers where you can help yourself if you have a ghost or a loved one who's died with you. And this next one was Sandra, and this was a very unusual case for us.
Yeah, we worked on this together.
And, my family and I suffered for years due to a curse. The sickness took over my life, my body, and my soul. I saw doctors at prestigious hospitals and universities around the country. The doctors had no diagnosis for the severe muscle spasms that I was having all over my body, along with the chronic fatigue. They treated me with chemotherapy infusions. I did get a little better for a little while, but I was also literally killing myself. This was a 10-year
Imagine
cycle.
that 10 years.
She goes on to say that she went to healers, shamans, and Reiki practitioners for help with no relief. I made a post online and I was introduced to Laura. She saved my life, and now I'm able to stop chemotherapy pills and infusions. Laura and Tina have been a lifesaver for me and my family. These ladies definitely know what they're doing, and I'm excited to keep learning from them. And they are amazing. God bless. So, with Sandra, she had a really unusual situation where, and I'm going to use the word black magic, was being performed on her. And when you have some type of mystery illness that no one can diagnose, chances are that it's something nefarious going on in a different dimension, because if you think about it, it's the microscope effect. A couple hundred years ago, people did not believe in washing hands because you couldn't see the bacteria and the virus. So why should you wash your hands? So this concept with Sandra and is because we could see those elements that were attacking her. And once we were able to remove them, all of a sudden she got her life back.
She got her life back, and it was for her, it was really amazing. And she did work with us. It was we were all three working together, and you worked with her
I
separately.
worked with her in
It
the
was just
beginning.
it
And
was
so,
just 2 times. It
well,
wasn't 100, it was just
and that's
twice.
the other thing. If you're hiring a psychic or somebody, you shouldn't be a lifelong patient of theirs. And so I originally worked with Sandra, and thanks to a connection made from a friend of ours, Janina, who saw Sandra's post, she connected us up together, and Sandra and I worked, and we removed those offending elements. But what ended up happening was a couple of months later, and she had been fine. She had a living relative show up at her doorstep who did all kinds of terrible things, and it wasn't as bad as the first time around, but she caught it. Sandra was wise enough to know what had happened, and we stopped that cycle.
Right. And that was amazing for her. Okay, we have another testimonial from Carol Ann. And this was from someone that I was working with. I was at my hairdresser's, and one of the other hairdressers asked me if I had any more crossing over prayer cards. And she was giving them to everyone who comes in to get their hair done. And so I asked her if they were working for her. And so she tells me this story. Her ex boyfriend was murdered. They broke up before he died, but they stayed friends. After he died, he seemed to be around her all the time. She could feel him. So could his brother. He felt that Jay constantly was near him. Carl, Jay's brother, would tell him how bad they all, felt, this whole family. They just never seemed to be able to stop grieving him. And it's been 10 years. And so she said, I felt so helpless. I don't know what to do. And then when you came several months ago and brought those cards, I got curious. So I sort of talked to Jay and asked him to give me a sign if he wanted me to cross him over. The next day, his brother Carl called and told me that he saw Jay in a dream and he was suffering so much that he couldn't breathe and he was begging for help. Oh my God, Tina, I had chills when Carl told me this, and I knew it was a sign that Jay had to be crossed over. So I took a deep breath and I got out the card that you gave me and I said the prayer over and over. Then I asked Jay to give me a sign if he was okay, if the card worked. Well, I'd say, couldn't have been 2 days. Carl called me all excited saying he saw Jay in a dream, all happy, healthy, and handsome. He seemed completely at peace. That did it for me. I had those goosebumpy chills all over me. It worked. The card really worked. I'm a believer. I tell all my clients about this story. Finally, I know what to do and I feel happy inside. I used to be so afraid of the idea of ghosts and I was not a good thing, but now I know that I can help them. Thank you.
And
Look at how much power she had.
Right. And that crossing over prayer is available at ghosthelpers.com. There's a video of it. And if you go to Spiritual Tools, you can order some physical copies of it as well. It's a
crossing over prayer cards.
It's a print on demand place. So it just makes it easier to ship because we can't ship these all over the place. There's just not enough time between the two of us. And, another one that I'm really grateful for, and we get a lot of comments and people writing in. If you go to ghosthelpers.com and you go to the bottom of that homepage, there is a share your story, and that's where these are from. And this was from Monica, and she says, an incredible thanks to Laura. I owe her my life. She reached out to me and helped me for several months now in ways that are so over the top amazing to do something for someone they'd never met before. And I've never met Monica in person or any, of them in person. But she says she took time out of her day to help me through some crazy things going on. And, if you're wanting further knowledge, check out their podcasts and websites. And, she said that I was funny too.
You are funny.
So anyways, we're really grateful for all of these because it makes a big difference. And so please do follow us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, wherever it is. If you're not connected or you're not sure how, write into contact@ghosthelpers.com and we will put you on our mailing list. And we don't share it with anyone. We send out one, maybe one a month. So you're not going to get a bunch of stuff from us because I find that annoying.
Yeah.
And so please do connect with us. And we don't have any dates firmed up yet as to where we're speaking, but it looks like we're going up and down the West Coast, and I'm hoping for Chicago area, by the way.
And maybe your hometown area.
Yeah, that would be so cool. So our goal for 2020 is to talk about soul health, what that means, how can we improve our soul health, because that is the one thing we all have in common as a soul.
Mm-hmm.
Period.
Although there are some soulless people, I have met them.
There are. Yes. Being of spiritual service. And when we can work to improve our soul health, our mental, our physical, emotional health, all of those also get carried up because it's generally a big math problem.
Well, look at it this way. That hairdresser moved on her ex-boyfriend who was murdered. It was so empowering for her that it changed her on all these subtle levels. She wasn't afraid of ghosts anymore. She did something that was of enormous spiritual service, and she got validation, which you don't always get. That's really the truth. She happened to get validation, especially when this ghost now says, I'm not a ghost anymore. Basically, look how happy and healthy I am, which is a really good
And
clue.
Somebody who's murdered will generally not cross over because of that trauma and shock and fear. And then how many times have you had something just shock you and you forgot what to do? It's the same concept. So crossing them over is a huge service. And we're going to be, like I said, speaking around up and down the coast and hopefully back east a bit. And we're also going to be talking about hosting some spiritual retreats. We're going to Monument Valley next week. I'm so excited. We're going to do a show from Monument Valley. So please do tune in to the Monument Valley Show, because we're going to be next week. We're focusing in on timelines and events and all of these things. It's a business trip for us. And we're going to kind of flush things out. Usually we do it in December, but my husband decided he no longer needed his appendix.
So that's what happened.
Yeah. And you know what he said? If you read Louise Hay's book, You Can Heal Your Life, what all these things mean. Appendix means, fear. So he's like, I had my fear removed. So my husband is no longer has fear.
Bless his heart. That was really cool. I think one of the things, as we're talking about Monument Valley, a lot of people think that the spiritual place is Sedona. And for a lot of people, it certainly is, but it isn't for me. It's a gorgeous place.
Yeah,
Oh my God,
there's
it's
a lot of
beautiful.
positive and negative energy there. I mean, and that's everywhere too.
It's everywhere.
It's everywhere.
But Monument Valley is a really remarkable place. Okay, so we do have some new books that are on the horizon that are coming out that are going to be super spiritually helpful. That
Yeah,
everyone
and
can
by
use.
the way, yesterday
Oh, this is
we
exciting.
submitted Ghost Stories from the Ghost Point of View Volume 2 as an audiobook. So that should be out in about a week or so. So we'll keep you posted.
Yeah, we're excited about that.
That's a good one. And check out ghosthelpers.com. You can find our courses and our books and all of these things that we're going to be doing here in 2020. We'd love to have you come and join us. We love what we do. We are super grateful to everybody at TTR, of course, and Benny at KKNW. And we want to thank the Oil Lounge also for sponsoring our shows throughout the year. They are an amazing company. It's a team of nurses who also use essential oils, so they have the science behind it. We'd love to hear from you. Contact us at contact@ghosthelpers.com. And thank you to Benny and Zach, our producers, for all their help in putting the show together. And we will see you next week.